Good afternoon, everybody. I've worked in the field of education for over 20 years. I've worked with Generation X, Generation Y, and I am bracing myself to work with Generation Z. Now, most of you will think that I know the tricks of the trade by now. I know how to interact with this generation, I know how to work with them, teach them, and learn with them. But trust me when I say that I'm still learning from this transition, from one generation to the next, and working with this group, whom we call Millennials. Because there is something unique about this group. This group of Millennials has the world on their fingertips. And for me, as a researcher, while I know that it takes years of research to gather knowledge, I work with this group who create their own version of reality based on what is presented to them in the form of fact, fiction, or what we call alternative facts. But we could also choose facts and form our own version, form our own reality. And therefore, my job as an educator is really an interesting one in this post-truth world. Now, how does this work? We live in a generation, we live in a world of information overload. How does media influence our psychology? What happens? What are the mechanisms that are at play? We often refer to this as subliminal perception. Subliminal perception, what is it? It is our perception, it is our reaction to the stimuli in our environment. And trust me, it has an impact. How? The food that we eat, the dinner that we're going to eat tonight, or what you chose to wear at this event, the tweets that you're going to share, what you're going to like, the photos or images that you're going to share on Instagram or Snapchat will have implications. I am concerned of the long-lasting implications that will be there on your understanding of human beings in another reality. What is the reality for them? And therefore, we're going to work with a small exercise. You are all sitting. Can you just sit back with both your feet on the ground and not cross-legged? Sit back, shoulders back. Take a deep breath. And when I say a word, when I speak a word aloud, I want you to be conscious of the imagery that your brain comes up with. So the first word is terrorist. Terrorist. What is the image that your brain comes up with? Is it a person? I heard beard in the background. Great. Is this a person from a particular ethnicity, belonging to a particular religion, and has a particular name, maybe? Have you ever questioned why did our brain come to this conclusion so easily? The second word, and again, be conscious of the image that comes up, is hunger, drought, famine. 3 words explaining what hunger is. Does your brain come up with this image of a child from a particular continent, of a particular color? Did we ever question why this image came up so quickly? The third word, which is the most important word and is relevant to this talk today, is that of slave. Slave, slavery. What comes up? Is it individuals with shackles in their hands, working to pull a big piece of stone, for example, building a pyramid, some other civilization, or working in plantations, again of a particular color? Have you questioned as to why information is packaged in such a way that we are led to believe that there are no slaves today, while the fact of the matter is that there are more slaves today than at any other point in time in history. But we are led to believe that it doesn't happen in our immediate circle, and we have nothing to do with them. We are not part of the supply chain. of slavery. Again, I'm here to speak with you because I work with slaves. I work with victims and survivors of human trafficking bought and sold for sexual exploitation. And again, it is a challenging task when I work with students to create that safe environment when they can challenge what they see, what they hear, based on the information that is presented to them. An example that I'm going to share with you, and I hear that very often from my students when we go to the red light district, whether it's a field trip or whether it's a planned project, when we go, the students tell me they don't look distressed. They don't look that they are there out of force. They look like they want to be there because they look very different from the image that is created by documentaries on sex trafficking, and therefore they must be there out of choice. Now my job has only half begun, right? Because when we then question legalization and pro-choice, we need to consider a number that all of us work with in the field. And before that, I'd like to share with you that even if we consider 10% of those that are working in the windows or selling sex on the streets are there out of choice, we really have a very big number of commercial sex workers who are sexually exploited every day and every night just in Amsterdam. And therefore, what is the real number that we work with? For those of us who are grassroots level workers, social workers, psychologists, faculty, doctors, lawyers, people in the police authorities, the number is 85%. We look at 85% as a number which is an example of how many of them are trafficked. Now another myth that I'm going to clarify for you, because I said my job as an educator is a lot of myth busting, right? A fellow speaker at a symposium recently, Professor Connie Reichen from the University of Tilburg, spoke to us about the perfect victim. Now I'm not going to ask you to close your eyes and again visualize the perfect victim, but I'm going to share that with you already. Who is the perfect victim? The perfect victim is somebody who's young, she's from a developing country, and she's probably sold by her family or somebody she knows for sexual exploitation. A lot of people who work in the field, we all fall prey to this fallacy, while research shows that vulnerability has no age. It has no race specification, it has no gender specification, because the victim could be a child, could be a woman, and could be a man. So another myth busted. Yes, men get sold for sexual exploitation too, and we work with them in the field. Another myth that we fall prey to is that there are push factors globally in some source countries which feeds into this entire global movement of slaves. And what are these factors? These factors could be poverty, lack of education, political instability, and therefore it pushes people out to another system. Again, let me ask you a question. Do you really think that it's just 3 factors? Do you really think it's a particular race only and a particular gender only? No. The face today of modern day slavery is very different from what it was in the past. The new face of modern day slavery has psychological coercion, not necessarily just physical threat. What is the psychological coercion? This psychological coercion could be due to the debt bondage that the women, men, and children have, that is the loan that they take to either get their documents or to be able to get transported from one country to the other. It could be because of threat to self, threat to their family, and because of which they are forced to work in the circumstances that they do. The next myth I'm going to bust for you is the fact that most of these victims, the perfect victims, don't have an educational background or don't have any professional experience. Research shows that they do have an educational background. Some of them have high school diplomas, so you can question for yourself today that you are in high school year and somebody else has a completely different reality and are living that reality. And they've had professional experience as well. Then what? Who is this perfect victim that we are looking at? And what about freedom? It was our choice today that we came here. It's our choice today when we walk out. But how do we look at choice or freedom for somebody who has none? The fact that they cannot protect themselves while selling sex from sexually transmitted infections, sexually transmitted diseases, that they don't have any right to speak up with regards to where they work, how they work, and how long they work. And therefore, question yourself, is this the image that you had of a commercial sex worker or a perfect victim, or has that image changed? Now what I'd like to do today is to make a call to action, to work with you to question as to what can we do. Whose responsibility is it? Is it that of the country, so the state, or is it you, or is it I? And how can we make this difference? What can we do to understand the facts better? What can we do to understand what is happening around us? What are the mechanisms at play, and how they influence our view of the world in this post-truth world? And the way we can do that is by asking questions, is by checking back, is by looking at facts. What has been researched instead of just what comes up in your social media feed. And I'd like to end this talk by saying something that I often share in my classroom setting, that I want you to walk out with more questions than you came in with, because it is important for you to question, to understand how information is being packaged for you to engage with, and how that will influence your view of reality in this post-truth world. Thank you.